Welcome to the module on collections emergency kits. My name is Rebecca Kennedy, owner and principal of Curai Collections Care, and I will lead you through this training. I'm a collections care specialist who focuses on collections management, registration, and collections emergencies. Emergency kits are a simple store of supplies on site or nearby used to stabilize an emergency incident. Well-developed emergency kits is one of the most cost-effective measures for reducing the impact of an emergency. Utilizing risk assessments, it is easy to create emergency kits, ensure their maintenance, and identify storage locations. This presentation will walk you through the decision-making process of building an emergency kit that fits the needs of your institution. Preparing Alaska's cultural organizations for emergencies is made possible in part by the National Endowment for the Humanities Democracy Demands Wisdom Grant. And thanks to the Alaska State Library's Archives and Museum for coordinating and hosting. There is no one-size-fits-all when developing an emergency kit. It is common for institutions to have many types of collections located in different parts of the institution requiring specific supplies and their response. Using your risk assessment, identify what incident is likely to impact which part of your collection and then build your kits accordingly. Remember, it is okay to have every kit in your institution be different. These types of collections listed above is not complete, but hopefully encourages you all to think about the different collections in your institution and their special needs. Don't forget accession files and exhibition spaces, as the loss of this material can possibly result in longer recovery or dissociation. There are three main types of emergency kit options. The most common are the on-site kits. These are ones stored in your institution, accessed only by institution staff and specific to the institution's risk. This supplies is usually limited to initial response or stabilization, as it is impossible to store all the supplies needed for a full response on site. The next is a cache or shared store. This material is often stored in a shared warehouse space with many other institutions in the area. Because a shared storage site is often much bigger, it can hold stabilization and response supplies. Finally, we have a go bag. A go bag is usually stored away from the institution and contains minimal supplies, primarily customized PPE or other health and safety comforts. On-site kits are the most common type of emergency store, so it is often the one people are most comfortable with. The on-site kits are stationed close to collections in storage or galleries for faster response. However, if the institution is impacted by an emergency, it is possible that supplies will be inaccessible or blocked, especially PPE, which you should don before even approaching an emergency site. It can also be a strain to find safe locations for the kits to be stored throughout the institution. If using on-site kits, it's important to remember you can mix and match types of containers. You should get one to specifically fit your space and supplies. So for example, on the pictures you see here, the bright red and yellow ones are stored behind the scenes, while the black ones were placed in a gallery. Kits should be easily movable for use all over the institution. And finally, they should be easy to identify. Here is an example of a logo used by this institution that is specifically for identifying emergency kits. The logo is used nowhere else in the institution to highlight its importance and uniqueness. So just to give you a case study, during a heavy rain, the groundwater swelled and began rising through the grates and drains in the museum's collection storage and conservation lab. The institution did not have an emergency supply, so the groundwater continued to spread while the facility staff went to look for a wetback. They could not find the wetback, so tried to use a floor buffer to absorb the water. However, it just proceeded to create small waves and push the water further around and mix with cleaning chemicals. This ultimately resulted in the humidity in the space to rise significantly, and staff was in panic mode the entire time and it essentially made the situation worse and caused more damage to objects and to storage cabinets. If they had a kit on site, they could have created a barrier with water socks and absorption pads within minutes. Their kits would have included a map to wet vac and dehumidifiers as well. This would have stabilized the scene incredibly quickly while they inquired about other resources and how to stop the flooding. So the benefits of having a shared storage space or a cache is that multiple organizations can take on the burden of financing the supplies and assist with inventory control. However, an MOU with all participating institutions should be agreed upon to ensure everything is done fairly. This includes equal access and use of the supplies. Another benefit to the cache is that it is located away from your museum. So if your institution is impacted, your supplies is unharmed and still accessible. If it is a region-wide emergency, this could change, but increases the chance of having available supplies. The cons is that your supplies is not near your collection for fast response, as we saw in case study 1. Also, in a region-wide emergency, you may not be able to access the storage site due to road closures or other limiting factors. Of course, you would have considered this all after analyzing your risk assessment. You will also need a vehicle or a mode of transportation that can carry all the supplies from your cache to your institution. So a case study about cache is that during an earthquake, there was a small museum that had suffered damage, including the collapse of cabinets, broken water suppression pipes, and exposure to building hazards. The institution did not have any emergency supplies on site, but there was an historic home just down the street. The staff contacted the historic home, discovered that they had had no damage, and was happy to share their supplies until hardware stores reopened. The staff was looking for supplies in a very panic mode, and everyone was running back and forth through the institution. And this constant movement created more risk because the objects were perched precariously and easily could have fallen over. They did not have on any safety gear in case there was any sort of structural damage. And they spread the contaminated water further throughout the building, causing more of a hazmat situation. The small institution learned following this how much supplies they would need for a response and realized they would never have enough money and space to store it all. So they set up an agreement with 4 of their neighboring institutions and rented space in the historic home's garage to hold all of their supplies. If you're unsure if you should use a cache or an on-site kit, here is a basic decision tree to help you decide. This tool is not the final say if one is better for you than the other. Please also consider your risk identified in your assessments. It is even possible, if you have the resources, to be part of a shared supply store and have kits on site. And here, when we're talking about resources within this decision tree, what we're talking about is money, staff, space, and administrative support. So I'm going to pause here for a few seconds to give you time to review the decision tree. So as the name suggests, go bags are used when you are on the go. And since this means you will be arriving someplace already experiencing an emergency incident, it's important for go bags to have all your PPE. In addition to PPE, you should have documentation supplies such as clipboards, notepads, forms, pens, pencils. Plus, you need anything else that might serve a purpose, such as water, food, flashlights, utility knives, etc. It's not easy to store a lot of response and stabilization supplies in a go bag. The go bags help you get safe access to the scene and then retrieve supplies from your larger kits or cache. The term bag just insinuates portability. It is okay to also have a bin, like the one you see in the bottom picture, that travels in a car or is easy enough to grab from another location and take with you anywhere. So here's another case study. Following a severe storm, museum staff receive word from their offsite storage facilities manager that a tornado has hit the building, causing the entire north wall to collapse. They arrive on scene and are denied access because they do not have any safety gear and the structural engineer has none to spare. So at this point, the staff had to rely on reports from structural engineers and debris workers to learn about the fate of their collection, which took many hours, days, possibly a week, and it was not a helpful report once it arrived. If staff had had go bags containing all the PPE, they would have been allowed on site and do a damage assessment themselves, giving them an appropriate report in a timely manner. This would also allow them to identify additional supplies that they could be working on gathering, recruiting people, and other resources very quickly. Now that we have talked about containers, let's talk about the supplies going in them. As mentioned, each kit can have different supplies in them for the same institution, depending on exhibitions and collection storage space and risk. The method that I found most helpful is to identify the locations where carts are needed. This can be based on distance between kits or the value of collection, and take into account if your institution is multiple levels, as there should be a kit on each level at minimum. This Excel sheet has the name of the location at the top and a list of supplies in the left column. Working as a team, either with your institution's staff or others with similar collections, use your risk assessment to determine what supplies is needed in which container and at which quantity. For example, if you have a large quantity of collections and storage on site, and the biggest risk is water leaks, so you need to look at all the equipment for related to water stabilization specific to that type of medium and how much material is stored in there. This could be different than, say, the ones you keep in your exhibition galleries, where the biggest risk is vibration and vandalism, and you obviously probably have a lot less material on the exhibit than you do in storage. So those, even though it's the same institution, they'd be two very different carts. Once you have the complete list of supplies, it might make it easier to then select your supply container so that it fits everything inside. You can also do training scenarios to help select supplies that assist with response and stabilization, which the staff are comfortable using. A suggested list of supplies is available on the Association of Registrars and Collection Specialists website, or ARCS. The handout is free, and I provided the link on the slide. This is a list of supplies I and other emergency response colleagues have identified as most helpful during our stabilization and responses. The list is very long, but you probably do not need everything. Again, look at your risk assessments and acquire only the supplies you need. Every year or after an emergency incident, you can reevaluate what is in your kits. You can even buy what you can afford this year and increase the quantity or types of supplies as the years pass or when funding is available. The goal of the supplies is that it should be cost-effective, reusable, and versatile. On the list mentioned above, each supply is broken into categories of use with a description of all the things that supply can be used for. This is just a list to get you started. Please use tried and true supplies if you have already identified them. I want to make clear that this supply is for salvage and response, not for preservation and conservation. Those are steps that happen during the recovery phase. Most of the supplies you need can be found at local hardware stores or from safety suppliers. Your emergency kits need to have all important documents inside. It may not be possible to use computers and tablets due to the type of emergency or power outages. So please put hard copies of all forms and documents inside the cart for quick access. Based on the size of your collection, you can have 20 to 100 or more copies of the documents and forms in the cart. I prefer to keep all forms and documents inside a brightly colored binder for quick identification. If using a cache, these forms can be kept on file in the storage space, and it actually might be easier if all the institutions part of this cache use the same forms. I suggest if you have multiple kits on site, you have a map of those locations in each cart for quick access to more supplies. Include in these binders any contact information for anyone who's supposed to be responding. It should also include an inventory of all the supplies found in that kit. And finally, include documents you need for the salvage or evacuation, such as the object tracking sheet seen here. The best way to identify what forms you need in the kits is to run scenarios. Which brings us to training staff. All staff should know where all the supplies are stored at all times. Having annual or more walkthroughs of the spaces for people to physically see the kits increases response time. After a period of time, we all become unaware of stagnant objects. So these walkthroughs are very important. And it usually only takes about 30 minutes. Next, you need to have tabletop exercises on how to use all the supplies in the kits, including the forms. People should feel comfortable with all the supplies in the kit, and it should not be a secret. Finally, staff provided access to all the maps and forms electronically to assist with the response. When putting together your kits, I just want to remind you of important general rules. Please never lock your kits. During an emergency, you will never be able to find that key. If you want some level of security, I would recommend breakaway zip ties, which only require 40 to 50 pounds of force to break. That's approximately the same force needed to start a lawnmower, for your reference. I've seen institutions secure their kits by wrapping them in plastic wrap, which does still require a knife or scissors to access, so it may not be your best option, unless you put a utility knife in a specific location anyone can access. Everyone should have access to the kits. It serves no benefit to be restrictive on who can access it. However, you can be restrictive on what the supplies is used for, such as make sure the supplies is used for collections emergencies only and not for facilities upkeep. Finally, emergencies tend to happen away from your supplies, so make sure the kits are easily transportable. This means you should pay attention to the weight of the container and consider wheels if needed, and keep those wheels maintained. Do not forget any helpful guides. I would recommend getting a salvage wheel for each of your kits and at least one easily accessible field guide. It's better if every kit has both. You can even put salvage guides inside the same binder as your forms and other helpful documents for quick reference. If you want to see what others are doing, FAIC did a few Facebook Live events a couple years ago where we looked at kits and go bags at the Smithsonian and Library of Congress. These videos are still available on the FAIC Connecting to Collections Care Facebook page under their videos tab. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about emergency kits and supplies. Hopefully this has inspired you to review your existing kits or start assembling one. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I will be available later at the discussion portion of this module.